You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com.
When you find the things that you're really good at, that's the thing that's easy for you, but hard for other people. Recognizing that distinction is, I think, really crucial for most people in their lives. Because I think, generally speaking, most everybody has something that comes much more easily to them than it does to the people around them or to the people they know. And if you can identify that in yourself and then really just double down on that thing and get good at that thing, that's where the huge success lies.
Welcome to REIA Radio, episode 220 with Andy Schock. Andy Schock, we are at a loss here in our research on you, and it appears that this might be on purpose from your side of the table here. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I think there was no picture, and it was just your last name was the letter S. It was just Andy S. And I don't think you ever had a post on LinkedIn. And then we tried Facebook and saw we did have some mutual friends, but it looked like your last post was like 2014. Or maybe that's just when I'm visible or visibility. What's the story with that? Why are you hiding online?
CIA.
Definitely. Wait, take that. No, never mind. Leave it in. It's fine. They won't catch me.
Got it.
No, the real truth of it is that I am just taking a very private approach to my business and to my life in general. Mm-hmm. That might have been my most recent Facebook post. Now that we say 2014, I use Facebook basically as a messaging app, and that's about it. I have sort of intentionally structured my business in this business and in my past businesses to sort of keep my personal life separate from my business life. One of my goals that I kind of tell people is I want to show up at my next high school reunion and be the most successful person in the room that no one has ever heard of. And I've gone to some lengths to do that. We've done all sorts of LLS separate entities to hold our real estate. And those are all set up through attorneys as the register's agents. So, I mean, obviously the police, the IRS, those folks can actually find out who owns what. But, Owen and Ted, it's kind of hard. And especially an angry tenant who's, maybe got an unreasonable response, which I have run into in the past. It's very, very difficult for them to just Google who owns 123 Main Street and show up at my house because I don't want that person where my kids live.
Ooh, I love that. Man, I'm trying to think. It was probably like 7 years ago. I met this motivated seller, and he was like 2 days away from a tax foreclosure. Oh. And the guy was a really big dude, and he had a hat on that said, "What did it say?" It said something like ex-military or something like that, and medicated for your protection. That was his hat that he was wearing, that he answered the door with. He was one of those like super loud talkers that was like really, really close to you. And he was really agitated because he's going to lose his house. And then we go upstairs and it was just a crap hole of a house. And he's like real close talking to me, and he's getting real animated, moving his arms around. And there's like lights flickering in the hallway. It was like a Resident Evil video game is what it reminded me of that house. But he was very good at online stuff, because and then he would like message me and be like, "Well, I saw you guys bought blah blah blah," and I was like, "Okay." That day I changed all my mailing address stuff to a PO box. So I will say there is definitely some merit to that. Unfortunately, with having 220 episodes of podcasts out there, I think Ted and I are like, it won't be too hard to find out where we're at, and that's the trade-off. There's a price to fame, Ted.
I tell you what, though, I had a client in the last year, and I always do the background check just to make sure I'm working with somebody legit. And I need to get their names for potential writing an offer. And I looked them up, and I'm like, they were ghosts. Like, I looked them up, and it was like zero. And never gotten like the forewarn app and literally seen nothing. Didn't show their cars, any previous history, any previous phone numbers. And then I got talking to them because I'm like, hey, I need some information here, because I'm like, I can't find you online anywhere. No Google searches, nothing. And the couple had different last names. And they're like, "Oh yeah, well I'm active CIA," and And I'm like, okay, that'll do it. That explains a lot.
Yeah.
And she worked in the fraud department. And so I couldn't find anything. She was a ghost. And so I figured you were going to tell us something like that.
I wish I could. That would be a much more interesting story than, honestly, my wife and I have both in different places in our lives had kind of unfortunate run-ins with random members of the public for no reason. She actually worked in a grocery store and dealt with some
Stalkers.
Yeah, crazy
Yeah.
people, You see all sorts of stuff in the night shift working.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. But we just took a very systematic approach to try to keep ourselves out of those public record sources. Mm-hmm. And truth is, I sort of started my digital life before Facebook rolled out. That kind of dates me. I know that. But I didn't get into it that much. So I didn't take as much value as like a lot of people did. It never really became a vehicle for me. It was an interesting way to kind of keep track of people from time to time. But I think one of the two of you used the words high functioning introvert, in a previous conversation. Yep. So I've just taken kind of a more hands off and less in your face. I don't want everybody to see me kind of approach. And as I've matured, I think there's a certain value to being in a more public space. But for now, that's not me.
Now, speaking of high-functioning introverts, we met you at a pretty sizable conference, right? So we just got back a couple of days ago from REI Summit in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. How does one handle a large conference with a lot of people? And how are you feeling? Are you wiped out?
Absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm a person who can do those things, but it is a very energy taxing activity for me. I have to go out and walking up to people in especially those big networking sessions where there's hundreds of people in this room and they're like, just go mingle. That just wears me out. So much.
I'm an extrovert and I'm worn out from that.
It's a lot.
I had a REIA event last night, and I walked up to the front of the stage and I was just I just was reading my script and I was really monotone, and then it just hit me as I'm looking at the faces I am really just burnt out and boring right now, and I stopped. And I apologized to everybody that was there. I'm like, I'm sorry. I had 30 old fashions in the last 4 days. And it let me restart with some energy. And I restarted and I was good.
Nice.
Yeah. So you're, being that Ted and I certainly partook of some libations in Austin. Mm-hmm. I imagine you're a little more fresh than we are, though. or is the mental drain equivalent to a hangover?
I feel like the mental drain is equivalent to a hangover, to be honest with you. The last hangover I had was a long time ago, so my recollection is not super clear, but the emotional connection is definitely there.
Okay, so when you are post-morteming this, is that a word? Post-morteming?
Sure. You made it.
Post-morteming. Yeah. When you're looking back at the experience of going to this, what was a takeaway that you had, or something where you're like, you know what, I'm really glad I went because of this thing or these two things? Anything come out or jump to mind?
There's a couple of things. One of the biggest ones was I had conversations with several people about how I should be valuing my time. And I'm going to own it. One of the biggest obstacles in my business right now is the fact that I have very little time to be doing the high value work. I've structured my life intentionally so that I can drop my kids off from school, so that I'm there when they get home, all of those sorts of things, so that I can spend time with them on the weekends to the greatest extent that I can. But I also have not done as good a job of carving out things like mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, all of those
household tasks,
household life tasks. And there's a lot of stuff that I think somebody described as $10 an hour work that I'm just doing a lot of $10 an hour work that I could hire out, and that would let me do $100 an hour work or $1,000 an hour work or $10,000 an hour work. And that's sort of the soul of, Jay and Wendy Papasan's One Thing book that I am really excited about, that I'd sort of been aware of it, but I hadn't really closely looked at my own life, and I hadn't sat down and looked in the mirror and taken a hard look in the glaring light of day and gone, yeah, you're terrible at this. And I am really radically making some changes as a result of that. By the time this comes out, my wife will know that I'm going to pitch pretty hard the idea of getting some more help and outsourcing a lot of those tasks so that I can focus on doing the things that I'm really actually great at, because I'm not a very good lawn guy.
Yeah, I think, it's a weird dynamic when you go through and try to make changes like that or implement them where you're not mowing your own lawn, or you're not whatever it is, whether it's you're not doing your laundry anymore. But there's a little bit of guilt with that too, where you feel like, at least I do anyway, and I'm guessing others do too, where you kind of feel like a little bit less of a man when you're, you know what I mean? When there's something that you're letting somebody else do that should normally fall under your husband or father or household, person duties.
And to play off of that also, I come from not necessarily strictly blue collar, but not a high income household. And my mom was a teacher. My dad worked for the state government and I think had similar income to my mom. we always had enough, but we were always had to be very, very careful with our money. My dad fixed his own cars, and he still tries to fix his own cars. I was raised to do everything for yourself, always put in the work, put in the time, put in the hours, and that's the way you're going to save your money and save your resources. And that's what they were raised in. They're children of parents who grew up during the Great Depression. That's sort of a Great Depression mindset in many ways. And
save.
Save. It is a virtue that I saved 55 cents today. They're the kind of people.
Good for you, son.
Yeah. Exactly. It's the same mindset. My parents don't do this, but it's the exact same mindset of the kind of person who drives all the way across town to go to Costco to save 10 cents a gallon on gas.
And they burned 3 gallons of gas getting there.
They burned 3 gallons of gas getting there and 45 minutes of their time. And they saved 75 cents on fuel, and they think they won. And they don't realize that in, big picture, that cost you a lot.
Yeah.
It costs you an hour of your time. It costs you $10 in gasoline. And it's kind of short-sighted, and it's kind of narrow-viewed. And, no disrespect intended to the people that hold those views, because it is very much the way we were raised. I think most people that believe that were just raised from childhood to believe that. But it's something that I've been working systematically to break out of. And there's been a lot of value in that. That's in many ways the big story of my professional career in the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. Let's dig into that a little bit. We talked a little bit at the REI Summit about kind of what you do. Home for you is Lincoln, Nebraska, or right around there, right?
Yep.
Now, were you born and raised?
I have been born and raised. I graduated from Lincoln High School. I attended Nebraska Wesleyan University and then UNL for a little while. And I've never lived outside of Lincoln my whole life.
And now talk to us about your entree into getting exposed to real estate or real estate investing.
Sure. It's kind of a weird story. My wife and I had a very successful event floral and services company prior to this. So 2006, 2007, we started this little personal services company. She opened a little flower shop because she wasn't super happy with her day job. And pretty soon I ended up helping her with that. And the next thing I'm working in there full time. And the next thing full time is 100 hours a week. And we're burnt out and exhausted. And we're talking to each other about what we want our lives to look like. We're saying, hey, maybe one day we want to have kids. Maybe someday we want to have the opportunity to not work a whole lot. At least not as much as we are working now. And one thing led to another, and essentially we ended up selling that company and stepping out of that. And my wife proposed that decision to sell to me kind of by surprise. And my response was, well, what am I going to do? Because we were partners in this thing, and I had my department, she had her department. I was a lighting and sound guy, and so I did lighting, sound, staging, all that.
Oh, so you guys did weddings and events, and then you also supplied any type of flowers or maybe decorations and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, we did floral decor, lighting systems, sound systems, staging, huge background stuff. It was wild.
Now, obviously, your rate of exchanging money for time probably wasn't optimal with working that many hours, but was that a profitable business?
It was a profitable business. I think by the standards of that industry, did reasonably well. It was very hours intensive for both of us because in a lot of ways it was kind of a personal services business. She did a lot of, it was just a whole lot of direct consultation with brides or with corporate clients. And I ran a scenic studio, and I had all this lighting stuff that was sort of my specialty and sound stuff that was my specialty. And it was super hands-on. It was super day-to-day grindy, selling the product, making the product, delivering the product, picking up the leftovers, cleaning up
weekend heavy.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
A typical Saturday, and when I say this, it's like every Saturday, started at 6:30 in the morning. And then because, a wedding venue, you typically have it.
It's usually on Saturdays.
Yeah. So we show up at work at 6, load the trucks, go to the venue, set up everything. Then they have a wedding. So I get a cool break at dinner time for an hour or two, which is nice. But then I'm back and I have to get everything out of there. And that is a multi-hour process.
The end of it. It's like cleaning up the bar after you close when you're bartending.
Exactly. Except I have 3 or 4 hours of loadout sometimes. So it was not unusual to get home at 3 or 4 a.m. and then need to be back at the office by noon the next day for meetings with potential clients.
Jeez. So Ted has a background in event planning and putting big events together, obviously with the REIA and all the other 28 professions you've had. But one thing about that is too, it's like, I appreciate all of the detail that you guys are able to handle in that event, because when you go to a really well-run event, you don't notice anything. It's just like, oh, that was fun. And it seems smooth and good. But if there's one thing that you forget or it doesn't work right, someone for sure is going to notice that and then be like, well, the event was good, but they didn't have the daisies that I wanted and we had to settle for roses or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or some detail that is missed. The light isn't working and it throws off everything else. So like it's such a domino effect with things that have to go right. And especially with weddings, you're dealing with, people that have their dream in their head that they want you to execute on. And that is a lot of pressure.
It's a ton of pressure. Yeah. And one of the other things about weddings, especially, is from a financial standpoint, from the clients, it's like I've come to the conclusion nobody budgets for their wedding. They just don't. When they ask themselves, how much money can I spend on my wedding? What they're really saying is, how much money can I get between today and my wedding day? And I'm going to spend all of it on my wedding.
So it makes it really hard for you because you don't have a budget to operate off of or a nailed down one. Or is it more of just like the add-ons all the time?
They just keep adding stuff on.
Oh, okay.
It's more than anything. Like they'll come in and say, hey, and we'll say, hey, let's do this and it'll be this many dollars. And they'll say, okay, great. And then they keep getting ideas and stuff just keeps getting added on and stuff kind of inflates. So it's very financially stressful for the client.
Oh, yeah. They're like, what if we got Kanye West to come in?
Exactly. Yeah. What if we dropped? What if somebody flew in a helicopter and dropped down and did some cool music or something? And as they earn more money, they spend more money kind of as they go. And so by the time you get to 3:00 on Saturday, they've been planning for 2.5 years. Sometimes it's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's go time.
What's like the craziest thing that's happened as far as like issue that's happened that you had to try to fix or couldn't fix?
That we did?
Is there anything like, oof, that one really hurt? I mean, it's somebody's big day, so usually it can be impactful.
Fortunately, we got pretty lucky. Yeah. And we were actually really, really good at managing crises. There was an event. This isn't anything we did, but we did do a wedding early in our career where there was so much. They had scheduled an open bar and they didn't serve the meal for hours ahead of time, and the whole wedding dissolved into a brawl.
Oh, the people are just hammered.
My understanding is multiple members of the wedding party went to jail, and it was.
Oh man, that had to be quite the.
Oh, wow.
Everybody's gonna remember that wedding.
I showed up the next day to clean up the venue, and there was not only was there a brawl, there was a food fight with the wedding cake. And that?
Can you imagine watching that?
That scene in Aliens, where they walk into the room and the goo just like falls down in front of them and everybody's shocked and horrified?
Yeah.
That happened, but it was a chunk of wedding cake falling off about an 18-foot ballroom ceiling. The next morning when I'm walking in just looking around and tables are turned over and there's all this glassware, there's like hundreds of dollars of glassware that's broken and like everything is just terrible mess. And I'm looking around going, I cannot believe this. And then
falls right in front of you.
Yeah,
oh my God.
I'd love to see the wedding photos.
I know, right?
They're in jumpsuits.
The photographer's like this.
Why are half the bridesmaids in orange?
Do you think they're still together or divorced?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a rough start.
My wife knows, but or knew at the time. I don't remember.
So I was a photographer at one point in my life, and I photographed a wedding. And I think it was the next day or 2 days later, my apartment got broken into, and all my camera equipment got stolen.
Oh no!
And I had all their wedding photos in the bag.
Dude.
And I always kind of joke. I was like, because it was like one of my close friends, and he asked me to photograph it, and I always joke that marriage didn't last too long, so I was off the hook.
So at least they're not going to hang it over you for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
right?
it's long gone.
So okay, one more question on this.
Yeah.
Did you ever have anyone where they're like, if anybody has any objections to this, speak now or forever hold your peace? Did that ever happen actually, where somebody like
I don't think so.
Or a bride or groom that like bailed? Did that ever happen?
We did, and I'm going to butcher this story, but this is how I remember it.
Well, we don't know it, so
it was told to me that we had a wedding where at the last minute the groom decided to jump on a plane with one of the bridesmaids instead of the bride.
Whoa!
Yeah, so that was not cool.
That's the whole next level.
But what was really cool is it happened at like noon or so, and the bride was just like, you know what? All my friends and family are here. I already paid for the reception. We get this call and just says, get to the venue, take down everything that says wedding at all. What's going on? Next thing you know, the bride shows up in a little black cocktail dress, throws a party anyway, reportedly had an absolute blast. And it's basically just hey, I dodged a bullet party now.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
hey, life gives you lemons, make lemonade with vodka.
Yeah, with a lot of vodka.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so that's how it was relayed to me. And I thought that was completely awesome. So
Oh, that's
anyway,
fun.
That's my past life. But
Okay. All right. So your wife,
That's good stories though.
great stories.
your wife informed you that you were going to be unemployed soon with selling the business.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Basically what happened is we had a little conversation about, well, what am I going to do professionally? And I had family that did real estate stuff. My grandfather had a construction company and built non-trivial number of houses, a pretty substantial number.
I'm sure we can't find that online either.
No, because he passed away in the early 1990s.
Okay.
So it's been gone forever. They had some rental houses, some stuff like that. And I have some other family members that have done some other things in real estate that's attractive. And so I was kind of primed for the idea when she said, maybe you should go flip some houses. And I went, what? She says, yeah, you've got all the skills. This is what you're perfectly prepared for it. And I went, oh, yeah, sure. I've got all the skills. I'm perfectly prepared for it. Everything's going to be great. And I jumped into it hook, line, and sinker. And it was a great idea. She sent me a bunch of Brandon Turner, David Green content from Bigger Pockets, and I just kind of inhaled that.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you know what year this was approximately?
2018.
Okay. All right. So 7 years ago. Got it.
It wasn't a bad time to be getting started.
No.
I mean, 20 years early in real estate, the best time to buy anything is 20 years ago.
Right.
It wasn't a bad time to get in. But what happened with me, kind of my start was I had my first house. We decided to get going. And if you can think of a mistake that you can make flipping a house, I made it. I bought it on the MLS. I paid close to asking price. I had my comps wrong. There's a major arterial in Lincoln called South Street, where this house was. South of South Street is a lot nicer than north of South Street. So where I had my comps set up, I had incorrect comps. I'd hired an agent that was a little bit inexperienced and so wasn't able to give me as much knowledge as I thought I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
And so for all of those reasons, I dived in. I worked on this house. I worked on it myself for an entire year. I did absolutely every little thing. I did the planning on it completely wrong. And when I sold it, I was $50,000 out of pocket.
That'd been one hold, huh?
Yeah, that hurt. That hurt.
Yeah, anytime you got to bring a check to closing when you're selling something is
I should say I didn't have to do that because it was all reno. So
got it.
I
Okay.
paid the reno out of pocket.
Got it.
I paid the renovations, most of the renovations out of pocket. And, it sold for about $60,000 or $70,000 less than I had thought when I was starting. And I didn't even realize that was going to be a problem until I got to be about 2 or 3 weeks from done. And I had a conversation with a much more experienced family friend realtor. And she and I had the come to Jesus talk. And she's like, no, this is a $200,000, $210,000 house, not a $280,000 house. And I said, well, I've got my comps here. She said, yeah, those are all over there, not here. And honestly, my wife was out of town traveling for a work thing for her new job. And I sat down on the stairs and just buried my face in my hands and sobbed for like half an hour. I was just so frustrated. I just couldn't, I was just so humiliated and embarrassed. And
Jeez.
it was just exhausting. I was just emotionally shot from that. And because the whole time I'd been just telling myself, I'm just working myself towards this end, towards this end, towards this end. It's going to be great. It'll be fine. And then it wasn't fine. And fortunately, good news, I called my wife and she was super understanding, didn't yell at me or any of the things that I didn't expect her to do, but there's that little voice in my head that was like, please just be understanding about this. And she was amazing about it, honestly.
We're like, you told me to do this. You said I was ready.
I didn't say any of that. No, what she really said is she said, well, how much would you have spent on a master's degree? And I said, well, probably about $50,000. She said, cool. This one only took you 1 year instead of 3. And
yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And she's
a smart lady.
She's an amazing human being. She's the smartest person I know by a rather large margin. But I mean, honestly, I would have walked away. If it hadn't been for that conversation, I was like, I'm never doing this again. This was the worst decision I've ever made. And she said, no, you just spent all this money teaching yourself to do this. Go do it now.
Wow.
And she's not wrong.
No.
That's the best advice you could get.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was the best advice I could have received at the time. And we were fortunate enough that we didn't get a lot of money for the prior company when we sold it, but it was enough to cover the $50,000 I lost and get into the next property. And I'm not going to say I learned every lesson all at once because I was still I took this approach that I was doing the work. I was flipping this house. I brought in some help. Now I had people helping me. So the next house went better. One after that, I actually broke even on. And it was kind of up and up from there. Over the course of the 3.5 years that followed, I really built this reasonably successful single team remodeling company. I got to the point where I was doing 1 or 2 houses at a time, picked up a few rentals, did some BRRRR deals, things like that. Made some money, but not a ton, if that makes sense. And then I got to a phase probably 2.5 years ago, where I just said to myself, look, I'm not making great money. I'm working all these hours, super micromanaging basically all of these people. And I realized that the smart way to do this was to bring in help and bring in really good quality help. And that's just been the most radically transformative moment of my entire profession. And so over the last 2 years or so, we have brought in a whole portfolio of proper general contracting companies, guys with their own crews. I'm pleased to say that I think it was last May, so about a year ago, I took the tools out of my truck. I told myself, no, if somebody needs to put a smoke detector in a house so that we can sell it, my job is to find somebody to put a smoke detector in. Yeah. Not to put the smoke detector in anymore.
Yeah, you're like that is a text message. That is not me going to the store for, half an hour, buying it, driving over to the house, getting my tools, forgetting something, going back, and then half your day is gone.
Even if it's as simple as the smoke detector is sitting on the counter and he's screwed to that ceiling, yes, I could do that in 10 minutes with the drill in my truck. I shouldn't do that anymore. And that's an actively bad use of my time, even though it won't take long and it's a small thing, because it isn't exercising the muscle that I'm trying to develop, if that makes sense. I'm doing something completely different than what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And what
it like interrupts your flow. You know what I mean? You're doing creative stuff, or you're working on like in a good headspace, and then all of a sudden you're like, crap, now I have to run over and put in a stupid smoke detector because there's a inspector coming back or whatever it is. Yeah, like 100% agree with you. That's the most frustrating part of any of those little tasks where you're like, I can do it. I'll just run over there. It'd be easier than just finding somebody or whatever. And then guess what? Half your day is shot and you can't get back into the flow again.
And this is coming from the guy that was painting 2 weeks ago.
Do as I say, not as I do.
No, that's completely where we are. And, it's the smoke detector problem, or the 8 trips a day running to Home Depot, because that's just how it seems to work in the construction business, especially when you have a bunch of projects going. Because I'm now to the point where I counted last night, 13 remodeling projects actually in progress and several more that I'm closing on in the next 30 days. So, it just doesn't work. So what I've done is I actually I have a guy that I bought a company truck for, and he's my going to Home Depot guy.
Okay. Now, do you pay him like W-2, or is he just a 1099 and you're like, hey, you're 1099, but use this truck?
He's a W-2 guy. After some conversations with my insurance agent, it seemed smarter to do that. He was actually a carryover when I had my own remodeling team. I had him. He's been working for me for years. He likes this kind of work. He likes the go and get type stuff. And so finally I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to buy a truck and put you in it. And 90% of your job is go to this place and pick up this thing and take it to this other place type tasks, or mow this lawn that the lawn company isn't scheduled to mow. Those sorts of tasks. And then I've also brought a W-2 person in whose entire job is to do all of those small little picky things that are hard to contract out, like go and install a smoke detector here.
The finishing items.
The blue tape. Blue tape solutions.
Yeah, the stuff where if I call my GC back and are like, hey, we forgot about these 7 things that were not on he's going to say, is it on the scope? And I'll say, no, because I forgot. And then he'll say, okay, cool. It's going to be $7,000 to do that, or some enormous, ridiculous number.
Or worse, they start on another, because once they pull their tools and they're gone, it's impossible to get them back.
Exactly.
And they're already starting on a new project. They already got a check from somebody else. So you'll be like, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it.
We just had a deep dive conversation that there needs to be a construction company just to do blue tape walks.
Yeah. Blue tape solutions. I think that somebody needs to start. Yeah.
I'm here for that.
Yes.
And here's what we do. We open one in Omaha, Blue Tape Solutions of Omaha. We hire like 3 guys, then we just sell it out to every investor in town.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Finally, we've got a doer involved here, Ted. Look, we've been talking about this for like a year. So
that sounds perfect. All we do is your punch list. We don't do any like handyman stuff for people who are not investors or professionals. Like all we do is come and fix your punch list stuff you can't get the drywall guy back to fix.
Yep. Or like you get an inspection addendum, like you're going to sell flip or whatever, and then you get that repair list, and you're like, oh god, your crew already left, they're gone, and then you just send a PDF over to the team, and they're like, I got this, and they go knock it out in 2 days, and you're done.
Who's going to crawl in the attic and reconnect that dryer vent hose to the little thing on the roof? those guys.
All right, listeners, we're looking for someone to staff our new company that we're starting here, Blue Tape Solutions.
I was
of
talking
Omaha.
My dad does that.
Does he?
But he only does it for like $1 million+ homes.
Okay.
And in these big mega builders, he's making more money he's ever made in his life.
Didn't you say he makes like $150 an hour or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And they're glad to pay it because then they don't have to deal with it.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And he's coming in clean houses. Like they're like he's just doing the finishing touches.
I think the closer you get to the end of a project too, the more willing you are to pay more, then it's probably worth doing that task for. Yeah, just get it done. I'll throw money at you. Yeah. I think there's something there. We gotta get this off the ground.
You're sitting there looking at a flip and you're like, if I can get this on the market, I might make $30, $40, $50, $80,000 on this house. And this $150 to have Ted and Owen's guy go and install a toilet paper holder or whatever is what's holding up the train.
Yep.
Have you ever heard that there's a great story about General Patton during the Second World War, and the whole U.S. Army is going through this, trying to go over a bridge. He's got this huge army group. He's trying to move over this bridge, and there's a donkey stuck in the middle of the bridge, and the donkey's being a donkey and won't move. And nobody can figure it out. They're trying to push and yell with the donkey, and the donkey is just doing what it does. Patton just walks right up, shoots the donkey in the head, pushes the donkey over the side of the bridge, and says, "Okay, guys, let's go win the war." And nobody else had that reaction, like to just get it done, just make the small expense that I have to make to get the job done right now.
And shortly after that, PETA was created.
Probably. Probably.
Yeah.
But
that's funny. Yeah. So he's like, hey, the most obvious solution is the one everybody's dancing around.
Exactly.
So let's just, I'm the guy, follow my lead. And then, that was probably a good rallying cry, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. And that guy got 4 stars and is famous forever. And they even made a movie named after him. So
what's called Shoot the Donkey?
It's called Patton.
So this sounds like a extremely transformative period of time, when you kind of made the decision to go more of the who, not how approach.
Absolutely.
And managing 13 rehab projects is very stout. And, like we had Tarl Yarber on a couple episodes ago, and he had 17 at any given time. He said he was managing that many rehab projects, and he's very high volume. So when you're looking at your business now, you mentioned when your first flip, you found it on the MLS. I know when you and I were talking in Austin this week, you mentioned, I think you said, now correct me if I'm wrong, but this stuck with me. You spend right now about $10K a month on marketing. Is that true?
That is right.
Okay. So you decided at some point to not just look on the MLS. What did you do to get, I guess, comfortable with going more toward the inbound marketing as opposed to just looking at what's on the market?
Honestly, I started networking with other people who are successful in this field, and I was pretty shameless about it. I will walk right up to somebody and ask them what's working. And
that's a good question, actually.
A lot of people are actually really receptive to that. If you're just like, hey, what's working for you, Owen?
Yeah. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that.
Right.
Yeah. That's actually a really, really good question.
I think only Brandon Turner has ever asked me that question, and that was last Saturday. And it's an incredibly powerful question to start asking people who are successful around you, because most people, there's some people who are very,
closed off.
Yeah, exactly. But more people than you would think. In my opinion, my experience, the majority of people are actually pretty open about it, because, honestly, I tell people there's nothing I'm doing that was my own idea. Everything I know, I got from people who are smarter than me, just by asking questions and, leaning in and offering value to those people so that they're actually willing to communicate with me, and doing everything I can to be worth those people's time. And if you just gather all that information up and kind of gather it and make a synthesis and say, hey, look, these 10 guys that I know are doing these things and it's working. And then you look out also at, because I had a rental portfolio I was building up as it goes. Well, I start getting a lot of inbound stuff coming in. I get a lot of direct mail, and all of a sudden the Google AI has decided I have rental properties. And so now it's concluding that maybe I need to start selling it. So I'm seeing a lot of other people's marketing. And I did some assessments on what does this stuff cost. And I said, well, smart guys in this business are not going to be paying $1 a postcard or whatever it is to send them to my house. I got 20 of them this week if it doesn't work. So I said, let's try it. And I tried a lot of stuff first. I started with some direct mail. In fact, I even went out and bought one of those cool handwriting machines that.
Oh, you did?
Postcards.
Yeah.
Those
The auto pen. I don't think that worked out well for Joe Biden, considering Trump is now through. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I'm not using it for that, but I do use it for sending postcards and direct mail letters and things like that, because I was blessed with the handwriting that would embarrass a doctor. My handwriting is completely appalling. I send you a handwritten note, you won't know what it says. half the time I pick up my own handwriting notes and they're looking at it going, oh, what's going on? And so I do still send small amounts of direct mail. I have a very targeted, like super curated direct mail list that I follow up with people either monthly or quarterly, depending on which property it is. And it's just properties that I've identified through other ways, whether it's, I hate to call it driving for dollars because that sounds systematic, but whether I incidentally came across these or it's, sellers that I can't get in touch with other ways.
So kind of a targeted list,
Super
targeted. small, more of the rifle approach.
Yeah. Like I'll send 30, 40, 50 of these a month at most.
Okay.
Like it's not that many. And it's not like, I know several guys that are sending 10, 20,000 postcards a month. And I'm just going after specific people that I just want to talk to this guy.
Do you remember how much you made on your first direct mail lead that you converted into a purchase?
Funny fact, I've never actually converted a direct mail lead.
Really?
Never. It never worked. I did kind of a broad approach for a couple months and I got frustrated with it. And I said that the ROI isn't this high. And when I was doing it, direct mail was super saturated.
It's definitely cyclical. Because I've done direct mail in fits and starts over the years, and it's sometimes you're like, is anyone even getting my mail? You know what I mean? Like you, I get a lot of postcards and letters and stuff, and it's just like there must have been a seminar in town where people are like, do direct mail. Yeah,
I had one deal that came in the pipeline that was a really good deal. I would have made about $60,000 on it, but fell out of escrow like a week before close.
Yeah.
Because the seller ended up having some title issues and it didn't work. But beyond that, I found direct mail kind of frustrating for that reason. You get an incredible number of angry people calling and like, why did you send me this postcard? And I'm like,
now, were you answering the phone?
That was the other mistake I was making. I was answering my own phone.
Yep.
And my wife was helping. And it was just kind of hard on the soul, honestly, to get yelled at by angry people all the time. And I think if I go back into direct mail in any significant way, I'm going to have a VA or an answering service pick up the phone, screen the calls, which is what I've been told by most people who are doing this at scale are doing now.
That's what Bartlett was doing there.
Yeah, he hired a phone service.
Yeah, and then he was calling and checking on them every couple of weeks. He'd place his own call just to make sure they're following the procedures. And then I remember he was doing a class, and then we called in live just to check into it. And then the first call nobody answered.
Oh, really?
And then,
that had to be a little embarrassing.
And then the next call, it didn't go to plan. And he's like, "Well, that's not what I expected." And then he fired him.
No. I can understand.
Wow.
I can understand why.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I got a little exhausted with direct mail. I still have my targeted little list, because there's that one house in Lincoln that I'd really like to buy one day when they're ready to sell it. And I can't figure out how to get a hold of that person any other way. But so far it hasn't been super successful. So what I did is I kind of pivoted to developing wholesaler relationships, which was somewhat helpful. I bought a few houses from them. Not always the best deals, but they're okay. And then I started doing PPC marketing because I know a couple other people in town that were doing that and it was working for them. And it started working right away. My very first deal that I picked up, and I won't say what town it was in because there's only like 3 houses that have sold in that town in the longest time. So I don't want to call out the seller, but it was in a small town in western Nebraska. And that was about a $60,000 spread on that at the end.
Okay. So, and you might be diving into this. I just want to make sure that we talk about it. So PPC stands for pay per click. So it's when you Google sell my house fast or we buy houses or like real estate investors in Lincoln, it should pop up if you're setting up with those keywords. You'll have 3 sponsored ads and that'll be one of them typically, right?
Typically. And
so people click on that and whenever they click, you pay. No matter if they actually call you, contact you, it turns into a deal or not, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
How did you know how to get all that set up? Because it's not easy. I mean, it's one thing to put a website up, but managing the whole like keyword phrases and what your budget's going to be and make sure you don't get clicked to death and all that stuff. Like, what's any advice there for somebody that's like, I've heard a lot about this, but I just don't know how to do it?
My first advice is getting into PPC is a big budget game. When I started, I initially tried to manage it myself and I said, I'm going to try to spend $1,000 a month on this and just see what happens. And it was very, very labor intensive to configure. There's more knowledge to how to set it up and how to manage it in terms of like setting your negative keywords. So like say, for example, somebody uses the words, sell my house fast. I'm interested in talking to that person. If they say, sell my house fast with a realtor, no, thank you. I don't want to pay $40, $50 to have my ad pop up, which is sometimes what I'm spending on certain combinations of keywords. Some of them are much higher than that, actually. But if it's the right combination of keywords, there's all of this configuration. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words that specifically that are no signs. I have other stuff set up that's positive. It's a huge amount of work to set it up. And I'm honestly not that good at it. And I was a little bit frustrated because it wasn't working the way I wanted it to work. Strangely, it wasn't even spending my budget because I had it budgeted for $1,000, and you tell Google, hey, I'm willing to spend up to $1,000 in this month on it, and I was spending like $100 because I just didn't have everything configured right. It wasn't working too well. I did get that one deal in Western Nebraska that I made great money on, which was cool. But then I kind of took a step back for a couple of months and was like, I don't know what to do here. And I had a bunch of other deals that I had acquired, Burr deals that I'd acquired some other ways.
Wholesalers or MLS or whatever.
Wholesalers and referrals, like just word of mouth, basically. And so I kind of focused on those for a couple of months. And when I mentioned it to a buddy of mine at a meetup, he just said, well, what you need to do is hire a professional to run this. Like, this is a professional's skills. Why are you trying to do this? Yeah. And so what I did is I hired a marketing consultant who specializes in managing PPC campaigns for investors. He has investors in like 40 markets, and he does have a deal that, he doesn't double dip in single markets. Yeah. And he went in, reconfigured everything. We bumped my ad from 1,000 ads spend from 1,000 to 3,000, and basically nothing happened for 6 months. But I was spending $3,000 a month on it. Oof. And the reason is because you actually have to train the Google AI what you're looking for. Yeah. So the Google AI is like, well, we don't know what this guy actually wants. So we're going to send people, and basically we're going to present your ad to anybody, or not anybody, but they're going to take their best guess. And then based on who goes to your website, fills out the form, and actually sends you their contact information, your website, my website is set up to send that information back to Google. So it'll say like, Ted came to my website and actually filled out the contact form. Well, in that case, Google says, oh, Ted is what Andy wants. He's the avatar. Yeah, exactly. And then it'll say, well, Owen clicked on the website and didn't like it. Ted did. And you repeat that thousands of times. And so all of a sudden, Google starts to get a pretty good idea about what the person you want to be talking to looks like in terms on their data set. But that's expensive. Yeah. I mean, if you did the math, if you're keeping track at home, we're talking like $20,000 before I got much traction at all. Yep. It was very expensive, took a very long time. And once it started working, though, it starts working. The people that I want to be talking to are the people that are reaching are actually being directed to reach out to me. Yeah, so it's kind of like negative and positive reinforcement. Absolutely. And it's you're teaching it as and paying for its tuition for it to learn from you what you actually want, which is complete bullshit, honestly. Oh, it's just like, and Google. So I'll rant for a second here, but like I had a similar experience to you where I started trying to manage that, and it's a monster. There's so many details to it and phrases, and then your bid strategy, and like what part of the month do you want to have most of your money going out, or do you want to budget it? And yeah, it's just like, I was so frustrated because I thought I knew enough to be dangerous, and then the results just weren't coming in. And then we did the same thing wing we decided we need to hire a consultant that has their shit together and does this for a living and knows, by looking at it, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, you need to do this. But the other thing that sucks too is like Google will just all of a sudden decide they're going to change their algorithm. And then your stuff that was ranking just all of a sudden doesn't. And then there's another learning process. Meanwhile, you're getting clicked and clicked and clicked and all that. So your marketing mix now, so it sounds like you started getting some traction after going through some pain with the Google education part of it. What is working well for you now? Like snapshot in time? Snapshot in time, honestly, Facebook ads are working better than Google. Really? Yeah. Interesting. The last couple weeks, it looks like at least we're getting more volume on it. How does it rank cost-wise? I've never done one Facebook ad. They're much less expensive. They're much less costly, but also they're much less motivated, if that makes sense. Like a person who sees a Facebook ad and is like, oh yeah, I might call this guy and ask him what he'll give me for my house, has much less motivation than somebody who types in, I'm getting foreclosed on next Wednesday. What do I do? Yeah. It's a totally different community of people you need to be in front of. You see a lot more people though. Yep. The Omaha market especially is hugely saturated on the Google side right now.
Yes.
Costs are absolutely sky high. And I think a lot of that is because there's just a lot of people doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason they're doing it is because it's working.
I think I started mine in, what was it, 2016, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
I started the PPC, and I was spending, in Omaha specifically, Omaha and Council Bluffs, I was spending about $1,500 a month, and I was getting some really good deals. I mean, this is before my business partner and I even got together, and I was like, holy crap, I'm killing it. And then, and then more people and more people and more people started popping up, and then you get outbid and your budget gets blown. You got to increase it and all those things. It's a full-time job just to pay attention to the marketing part of it.
It absolutely is.
I did use Facebook ads just for promoting this podcast, and we saw double numbers that month.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when we had a huge spike, it was the same time we were doing the ads, and the spend was really minimal. I mean,
I'm almost a little bit feeling silly that I'm saying this in front of everybody, but yeah, right now Facebook is a lot more affordable than Google. And as long as you're not laser focused on finding somebody who's just got an incredibly high level of motivation, Facebook seems to be working. There seems to be a fair number of people that are sitting home and scrolling Facebook instead of solving their problem.
Yeah.
And then they see a solution presented in front of themselves and they go, oh, cool, I'll take it.
If you had somebody that you were talking with that has never done pay-per-click before, and you look at, okay, what is their experience level? What do they currently have going on? Do you think there's a right time for someone to do that? Or as far as their knowledge level or that kind of thing? Or should you just go like right off the bat, dive in with marketing and figure it out on the way?
My thoughts on it are, unless you have $30,000 to $40,000 that you can just set on fire and that you can just walk away from, I wouldn't touch it. And that's what I tell people. I said, look, because you don't know when that deal that's going to bring in some revenue is going to make it from. So you need to have some other avenue in your business that's funded. And you need a war chest.
Yep.
Like before you can go into this, you need to say, I have as much money as I can use to buy a new car, and I'm instead going to invest that in PPC ads. And it might work or it might not. And I'm not going to be stuck.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, because it's a huge investment to get it going.
What do you think about this? I had this thought experiment. This has been a little bit since I've even brought this up, but you know how a lot of investors, when they're starting out, money is a big problem, right? They don't have enough money to go out and buy like more than one flip at a time. It takes them forever. They get that one done, and then they weren't paying any attention to deals during that time while they were working at it. So then they got to start all the way over. You lose traction, all that stuff. And, getting back to your point about the lighting, chunks of money on fire, like 50 grand, I actually totally agree with you on that, because when we were doing about 40, 50 flips a year, we were probably spending between direct mail and pay-per-click right around 100 grand.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you may go 3 months and you may not get really much of anything. You get some leads and then you get beat out by somebody or whatever. And you're just like, oh, I just spent, $30K on this and I didn't get one thing. And then all of a sudden you'll get a deal that'll be like, we had one that was like $110,000 profit on a whole tail where we didn't have to do anything.
Wow.
Yeah. We just cleaned it out and sold it.
Wow.
And then that paid for a year and a half of marketing.
Absolutely.
Or, right around there, or whatever the numbers are. But that stuff's very common too. So if you're not consistent with it, if you just try it for a couple months, that's not enough. No. So my thought on this was, instead of people, because when you're starting out as a new investor, people always talk about, private money, get private money, find a rich, person and talk them into loaning you money. And I'm like, why don't you find a way where you can borrow money and give a decent return over the end, give it 1 year, but that's all going into marketing. And instead of trying to find $100,000 from a private lender and find a deal, why not blow it up and just say, if you give me 100 grand, here's my entire plan. Here's how I'm going to allocate it. Give it 1 year, and you should get enough deals to more than enough pay for your marketing spend, and then you'll get traction after that. So I don't know. It's a different approach.
I think I don't want to say a better approach. I think it's a smarter approach. I'm not sure Andy, who's just starting in this, could have executed on that.
Yeah.
Which I think is the challenge. I think a lot of because I do talk to people at, meetups and stuff from time to time. I don't always just stay at home, but when
Introverts unite.
Yeah, exactly.
Separately in your own homes.
Yes, exactly. When I talk to people that are looking at getting started, most of them either don't have the financial resources or don't have the business standpoint, aspect of it. When I'm spending $120,000 a year on advertising, I have a systematized business that can absorb those leads, that can dispo them, that can actually turn those into something profitable at the end. And we do pretty well. We can turn those into decent success.
So we were talking, you and I were talking about the fact that, how'd you put it? You said a flipping business.
A flipping business is a marketing business, I think. At the end of the day, I think.
How do you mean that?
Well, I mean, the thing that you do when you're doing a flipping business, in a lot of ways, I mean, everybody will tell you buying the house right is the most important part. And the way you buy, at least the way I buy a house right, is I get in front of highly motivated sellers and I negotiate prices that work for both of us. And I feel like anybody can do that. Negotiating prices, go read Chris Voss. You'll learn how to negotiate. Boom, right there. You'll be a rock star. Just read that one book and do everything he tells you to do.
I think it's a book I've actually read more than any other book in my life.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Never Split the Difference is, for anybody who doesn't know the reference, is fantastic. But that's just a process. Once you're in front of the right sellers, you just kind of go through the process. You negotiate, you close, you remodel, you resell. Boom. It's very formulaic. The thing you do that drives your success more than anything else, beyond just getting better at all of those little systematic steps, better at negotiating, better at remodeling, better at reselling, the thing that makes it great is getting in front of more people. Marketing yourself so that the right people are reaching out to you, ideally, or you're reaching out to the right people so that you're communicating with the people to start with. Those initial conversations, that is the soul of the business right there. And so many people who are in this business, I know, are just exhausted with talking with new leads, because so many of them have no motivation. They're just calling to tell you that, hey, I've got this house. I talked to a lady this morning who has a multi-million-dollar house that's been listed on the MLS for several days and wanted to know what a cash offer on it would be. I looked at the pictures and was like, this house is beautiful. Don't sell it to me. Don't sell it to another investor. Just hang on. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe I could sell it sometime soon. I'm like, don't panic. You're going to be okay. But you have to talk to those people in order to get to the people who are calling you. For example, last year I talked to a gentleman who called me on a Wednesday and said, hey, the foreclosure auction is on Tuesday. What can I do? That turned into a pretty good deal.
Yeah, but it did.
Yeah. So
I feel like every time we talk to somebody, and they're like, always the best deal is like, I got like 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're like, which title company do I know who can
who can ram this thing through?
Yeah, who can get this done before the sheriff gets there, because he already got in his car headed down to the auction.
I was trying to remember, Ted, was it Jordan Downey we had on where we talked about the concept of what your business actually is as opposed to what it's masquerading as? Yeah. So like, his CPA firm, we talked about, it's actually a recruiting and retention business. It is not, an accounting firm. The whole lifeblood of their thing is having good, high quality CPAs and keeping them and training new ones.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about the true lifeblood of a flipping business is not remodeling and making things pretty and all that and the big check at the end. It's actually driving leads, because if you do not do that, everything else doesn't matter, because you're not going to have anything to work on. And
in many ways, driving leads is the one thing you can't outsource. And that's been my biggest success the last 2.5 years is I walked out of the construction side of things. But you know what? There's hundreds of guys in Omaha, maybe thousands of guys in Omaha who are better at construction than I could be.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I'd just get out of their way and let them do it. I'm good at driving leads and negotiating deals. That is my superpower, is I can negotiate very, very effectively with people, and I can make sure that we structure a deal that works for both of us.
And also, I think it's like when you have people that they're like weekend warriors, where they're like, hey, my wife and I or my husband and I are going to flip a house. And they've been watching HGTV and maybe they have some friends that have done it. And they're like, we want to flip a house. And it's like a pet project, and they're all excited about it, but it's not a business. And nobody that's ever going to start a legitimate business ever says, oh, I want to open a grocery store or a restaurant. I'm just going to try it and see what happens. So it's like you have to take that seriously, and you actually have to ask yourself, is this something that I really want to make into a viable thing? Not just dip my toe barely into the water to buy a house and see how it goes. It's bacon and eggs. The chicken's involved, but the pig's committed.
Here we go again.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like they're just dipping their toe into it. So I think, nobody's going to open a hardware store if you don't have a full business plan and execute on it.
Right. And, one of the things that I've observed, I guess, is I feel like there's a lot of people who want to make their hobby or the thing they do for fun into the thing they do for money. And when I say a lot of people, I mean me, because that's exactly how I got into my last company. My wife was like, I like having a flower shop. I worked in a flower shop in college and I liked it. And I like doing it for fun. So let's do it. And the next thing it becomes a job you are exhausted by and burned out on. And even years later, you miss it sometimes, but you're never going back. And honestly, I don't particularly like working on houses anymore. I enjoyed it a little bit, but it never was like my hobby or my recreation.
Yeah.
It's just a thing
means to an end.
Yeah. It's what I do for a living. It's a job. It's just like if I worked at the gas station, it doesn't mean I like taking money from people and sticking it in a register.
Actually, I like that. And just to like kind of further the thought for a second, it's kind of like if you took, what's the saying about entrepreneurs? They're the people that'll work 80 hours a week to avoid working 40 hours a week for someone else. But if you actually took, Ted, your day-to-day tasks and my day-to-day tasks and Andy, your day-to-day task, and you put them on a job description, nobody's going to want that job. Like, most of it sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, call this person that I know is mad at me. If that is part of your job, like who's going to, but you have this, perception where if you have a label of entrepreneur walking around above your head, then it's like a badge of honor. And you're like, well, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I own this business. And you're like, is your business fun? I mean, most of them are going to say, no, it sucks. Like all the tasks I have to do, you just kind of, that gets, glossed over with the fact that it happens to be your baby that the tasks are involved with. So it's like, it's funny because we can just put blinders on without realizing it.
But
absolutely.
Do you think of it at the point where you discover what you said, the word, your superpower? Do you think at the point when you discover what your true superpower is and you own it? Do you think that kind of changes how you think about things and actually makes things feel a little lighter if you're putting more focus on exactly what your superpower is?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because
no, it really does. Because I started, I sort of came from that scarcity depression era mindset where it was like, hey, you just own the grind. And if you just grind hard enough, success will happen.
Save that 55 cents.
Yeah, save that 55 cents. Make sure you wash that Dixie cup. Don't throw it out. That kind of stuff. That's where I came from. But that's not where the results are made. And the more I've realized the results are made in doing certain things, and I can be very inefficient in a lot of other areas of my business and in other areas of my life from a strictly financial standpoint or from an energy standpoint, if I can be really productive in the things that are actually easy and good, come well for me. Because I think for most people, at least, the thing that is your superpower is also the thing that's easiest. I'm going to make a confession. I was a technical theater, history, and religion major in college, which are all guaranteed to earn you a high income. Don't anybody.
Your parents were like, great.
Yeah, right.
Can't wait to write this tuition check.
Yeah, don't anybody go out and borrow $100,000 in student loans based on what I just said. That's totally a lie. But the truth of the matter is none of those things were things I was actually good at. They were that came naturally to me. They are things that I liked. But they were extremely hard because I had this weird idea that college was supposed to be hard and you're supposed to have to work really hard in life and do the hard thing. And that's how you're going to be successful. And people were telling me at the time, but I was an 18-year-old idiot. You don't hear the things that the smart people are telling you until you're in your 30s. And then you're like, oh man, grandma was right.
Listen to that.
But I should have been doing totally different things. But when you find the things that you're really good at, that's the thing that's easy for you, but hard for other people. Recognizing that distinction is, I think, really crucial for most people in their lives. Because I think, generally speaking, most everybody has something that comes much more easily to them than it does to the people around them or to the people they know. And if you can identify that in yourself and then really just double down on that thing and get good at that thing, that's where the huge success lies.
And hope that it doesn't get taken by AI in the next couple of years because...
Well, yeah, there's that.
It was just yesterday I was watching this reel, or maybe it was on the plane when we were coming back, and it was something along the lines like, he goes, 90% of the things you're studying in college right now, those jobs will not be available for you when you graduate because AI will have taken it over.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think it was just something that person just spit out, but I'm like, it makes you sure the hell think about that.
Yeah.
I'm terrified for what, 14, 15, 16-year-old people are walking into right now.
Yeah.
Because they're being educated in an education system that's designed for what the world was like 50 years ago. And they're going to get hit with this tsunami that I think is honestly going to be the most radical economic transformation this country has experienced probably since the Industrial Revolution, maybe including the Industrial Revolution. And I think the smart people are making the right choices, are getting themselves ahead of that and are kind of thinking about what this is going to look like ahead of time and taking some steps to prepare themselves. But if you're a teenager and you just show up to high school and just do what you're told, I think you're basically walking out in front of a giant economic truck. And it really scares me for what those people are going to experience and go through.
The hardest part about it too is like, I have a 16-year-old and I don't know how to help her because I know less than she does probably about what is actually going on with tech and AI and all the new, apps that are coming out, because like when I was growing up, my folks were both entrepreneurs and they had the industrial revolution type of a mindset too, and it's like, that was the big event, automating a lot of stuff, offshoring of a lot of manufacturing. So that was kind of the big change during their time. And then we came into the information age, and then everything went, that was a pretty rapid, radical, evolution in society. And I think you're right. The social media and AI aspect of this is just, I don't even know. It's so hard to keep up with. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think somebody said to me this weekend, actually, who actually is an executive in tech, is his real job. He just came to the REI Summit because somebody invited him. But he was basically saying anything that can be done remotely over the internet, and AI is going to do it. So customer service, even something as simple as evaluating deals, like realistically, the bots are coming for those jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was trying to find some information on you, and this kind of is correlating to the superpower phrase, which I starred. I noticed that one of the mutual friends we had in common was Jason Dries. And Jason was the guy that actually asked me that question. It's like, what's your superpower? And let's focus on it. Do you just follow him? Do you do his coaching, or what's the story there?
I got involved in Jason's coaching program a number of years ago, kind of right before he started scaling his business.
Okay.
And I think, to be honest, I probably stole the "What's your superpower?" question from him.
Okay. 'Cause that's where he really made me focus on that.
Yeah. I've had a lot of really fantastic and enlightening conversations with Jason.
Yeah.
I'm actually now working with a different coach in his company by the name of Peter Warren, who is a little more tactical because a lot of the things that I needed help with is like sales related interactions and technical customer interactions. And like, hey, how do I deal with somebody who's saying this?
Yeah.
Things like that. And I was confronting Jason with a lot of those questions. And he said, who you need to talk to? Put me with Peter. I was with Jason for 2 years, I think, then Peter for 3.
Yeah.
And that's been really radical for me as well. One of the things that I really found in my business is investing in outside, basically paid professionals to work on me and work on my ability to kind of handle these things and handle these questions has been really, really, really valuable. And in fact, I actually have 2 coaching companies that I work with right now. So I'm talking to somebody every week for about an hour.
It's impactful, isn't it? Like
huge.
I have had a coach for over 20 years. And then I signed up with the program. I started working with, we interviewed Jason. And then I signed up with Joe Moffitt. And then and Joe and I were good. We had a lot of same interests. We flew Jason in a few months ago to speak at our REIA group.
Yes.
And then hit off really well. And he's like, you need me to coach you. Let's do this. And we did that. And I felt like, no dissing on Joe, because it was great coaching. But what we completed in 3 to 4 months, Jason was able to do in one session and go above and beyond.
And that was, for me, that was my same experience. It was honestly, I felt like I was just thinking super, super small.
Yeah.
And I believed in myself like I was a small person and I was always going to be small. And I could maybe only make these little incremental steps. And Jason was like, no, man, like in 12 months, you can go from here to way up here. In a month, you can go from here to way up here. All you have to do is just do the work and believe that you're able to do it. Like everyone is hugely more capable than they really think they are. Like I know almost no one whose belief of themselves is actually realistic in terms of how much capability they really have.
Yeah. Our big focus right now in our conversations it's like you come from a life of no money. And he said those chains are still holding you down. And he goes, you got to break those chains of thinking that you're not good enough to have this money, or you're not capable of handling this money. And those are like some deep conversations that we've been having lately. And also he gave me an ultimatum that he has to start a version of a mastermind. Otherwise he's going to drop me. And he's like, what's your he's like, let's do a mastermind. I'm like, I'm going to tell you what, I'm not a coach and I'm not a guru.
Right.
And I'm not, I'm not an educator. My wife's a teacher. She's an educator. I can't stand that. And he's like, well, you're a connector. So let's use your connections to create something. You got to put it out in an email or newsletter here in the next 2 weeks. Otherwise, I'm not going to be your coach anymore.
And that's decisive.
Shots fired.
But
decisive.
Yeah.
Like that.
His other coach, Andrew Devlin.
I don't know Andrew.
So he does a lot of their breakout sessions. And I have gotten just as much out of Andrew's breakout sessions as I'm starting to get out of Jason. And great content. And we're actually going to get him on the podcast here in a few weeks. So super excited about that.
Great.
And I would recommend checking out one of his breakout sessions too.
Yeah. And make sure you let me know what you end up doing on that mastermind.
Yeah.
I'd be game to hear about that for sure.
We'll do. Well, we have learned so much about you and your marketing and everything you got going on. And the fun part about this is, we randomly met at the summit and somebody's like, yeah, there's another Nebraska guy over here. I had no idea what you got going on. And you're just murdering it.
Oh, thank you.
And so I know it's been great, but I bet that you have some great lessons that you've learned in life. And we have a section we famously call Failing Forward. In this section, it is a failure that you had in business or life, and you would never take it back because there's a learning lesson that came out of it. Do you get one of those examples you could talk about today?
From a life that is full of those. In a lot of ways, I would say the most pertinent one is that I've sort of hit on this earlier about how we had some very unsuccessful transactions at the beginning that just did not work. And, we lost money on them. I have burrs that I left ridiculous amounts of money in that I didn't plan to, things like that, that I feel like that the biggest lesson that I took from that and that I would not give up is that you have to be able to realize that everything, I don't want to say happens for a reason, but how it affects you and like what happens in your life as a result of the thing that happened to you is mostly about how you decide to view it. Life doesn't happen to you. You happen in your life in response to the things that are going on around you. And that's what determines happiness. That determines whether this thing that happened, for example, where I lost $50,000 on this house, plus, I didn't get a salary for a year, was either the worst thing that could have possibly happened or something amazing. Whether it's an opportunity for me to learn everything I needed to know compressed into this 12-month period, not everything, but most of it, or whether it was this financial disaster and I lost all this money and oh no, and I should just, go get a W-2 job working for somebody else. And building that perspective and that you get to choose what the results, how something impacts you has been probably the biggest realization of my entire life. I was very much like coming from that scarcity mindset where life happens to me and whatever happens and that's terrible or it's great. It's all based on just the external factors instead of me being able to turn around and say, hey, these things came in, but here's what's great about this. Here's what isn't the best about it. I'm going to choose how to deal with this. And that's brought me a lot more happiness. And since there's really no amount of money or business success in the world that can make you happy if you don't know how to make yourself happy, that's probably my most valuable ability right there.
Now, it's I'm sure Jocko Willink would be proud of that mindset too with extreme ownership. Like life doesn't happen to you. Your reaction to what happens to you is the true, living.
Absolutely. I probably stole that idea from him years ago, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, when you told that story, honestly, initially, in the way your wife responded, I'm like, my mind went right to being your failing forward because that changed your whole entire life and how you think about things, right?
Absolutely.
And the way your wife responded was perfect. And like, hey, this was a lesson. Let's get back on your feet. You're embarrassed. You're not going to do this again. And now you're going to double check everything. I mean, that's the whole reason we have this section was that story right there.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like is honestly the most important thing in life. Basically, everyone could benefit from just having that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's life look like for you, current state?
I'm really, 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 really spoiled. I have two fantastic little boys. They're 1 and 3, and I get to take them to daycare and drop them off in the morning. Every morning, my wife picks them up, brings them home. I get to be there at home when they get home. So I'm pretty sure they think I work from home, to tell you the truth. I have control of most of my weekends, and that's been an intentional choice. I have sort of built my life to make sure that we can spend time with them, especially when they're young. And that's been really important. We have plans for what we're going to do when they're a little more mobile. We're going to do a lot more traveling and things like that. But for right now, we're staying, close to home just because that's where they are in their lives. But I'm able to spend a lot more time with them than I think a lot of folks are. And yes, I confess, 7:30, 8 o'clock, they go to bed. I usually go back down to my office and work for another couple hours.
I think we're all guilty of that.
I hope one day to not have to do that, or at least not feel like I have to do it, but that's where I am.
But as long as you set that time up, I mean, I know, especially when my kids are younger, I was really diligent about like, hey, the laptop, my phone, and my watch all stay in the garage when I got home. And I didn't pull it back out until the kids were in bed.
Exactly.
And, so that, I was really intentional at that time. But then I realized I wasn't being intentional with my wife's time.
Yeah. I'm not as great with that either.
And then she started noticing. And so, I had and that was part of my coaching. He's like, your time for work is 8 to 5. He goes, and if you, or whatever your time frame is, he's like, you need to be able to time block your day accordingly so you're not checking your emails at night. Because I literally would open up my laptop and then I would work on emails until the battery died. And now I'm just having to get used to the fact that there's consistently 260 emails in my mailbox, even though I'm deleting as many as I can throughout the day.
There will be.
Yeah, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah. But for where we are right now in my life, I think that's great. I've got a bunch of flips in progress. I think I counted the other day. I've got 13 projects running right now, and I'm under contract on a couple more that are going to close in the next couple weeks. So,
and how many of those are you holding?
Of the flips?
Yeah. Are you selling everything, or are you holding some of these too?
No. Okay, the weird part is these flips are just the ones I decided to resell.
Yeah.
Because they have spreads on them that I like, and essentially where I'm at in my business right now is I've been building a portfolio of single family rentals, duplexes, small stuff like that. Those are fairly labor intensive, but I have this flipping business that can generate some cash. And so what I'm planning to do this cycle of flips that are in process, I'm going to roll into probably some sober living facilities, and I'd like to move into some smaller multifamily properties as well. I'm looking to buy somewhere in the 12 to 30 unit, something in that range. But to make it cash flow, I do have to put a lot of money into it. So the plan is to basically just take all this cash out of these flips and push it into a medium-sized multifamily property and hopefully 3 to 5 sober living facilities.
You know what would be great for you? Attending the August 20th multifamily midsize mastery. What are we calling this? Masterclass?
The REIA Mastery?
Yeah, there we go.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
that sounds exactly on brand. You'll have to send me the information about that.
Yeah. We just have a slow sales cycle where every one guest we have in each week, we just systematically go through and try and sell them.
That sounds very efficient.
Well, yeah,
very
right.
effective.
No, that's great. I really like the changes you made and kind of went to, you've got 2 children in the house now where it's things look a lot different than it did, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And you're embracing the time with the little ones and the wife. Yeah, it's good stuff, man.
Thank you. We're really happy with it.
Oh, Ted's busting out the.
There you go. There's the flyer.
There it is. That is a good looking flyer, and that is a good looking picture of you, Ted.
Yes.
Not me so much, but evidently, but whatever.
I had a beard.
Yeah.
We decided we need to get new headshots for marketing materials.
Yeah, we're starting to look like those aged out realtors where you're like, wow, they're pretty good looking person, and then you meet them in real life, you're like, ew. Somebody put a filter.
I thought you were going to say that we hit the gym more and we look better now. That's why we get new photos.
Oh, maybe I'm just talking about myself.
Yeah, I just ordered new headshots for myself yesterday. Actually,
did you?
So yeah,
nice.
So yeah,
headshots around.
Yeah, I looked at my
for that LinkedIn page.
Well, I don't know. I might or might not put something there. Oh, probably.
He could just start by adding his last name instead of Andy S. That's a good first step. Baby steps.
Yeah, little increments, but.
All right. Speaking of baby steps, we got one last section for you here that we call the OT with Owen and Ted, where we've got some hard-hitting questions for you.
Okay.
You weren't extremely well prepared for these because of us not giving them to you ahead of time, but we'd like to see how you react here.
Okay.
First question. You're going to write a book at some point. Do you ever think you'll write a book?
It's crossed my mind. Here's a weird thing about me. I'm a pretty good writer, but I have they call it a specific learning disability. Like in 1990 something in elementary school, I was typing on these ancient laptop computers because there's something I have a terrible challenge writing, like handwriting stuff. Getting from my head to my hand, there's like a disconnect almost. And so I have to type everything out. So the idea of like being a writer is like very conceptually weird to me. Like it seems very strange because I'm like, sure, I would dictate something to someone. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm kind of hopeful about AI.
You're just talking to AI.
I'm just going to talk to my phone, or one day my phone is just going to email me and be like, "Hey, by the way, I synthesized.
Here's
everything.
your book.
Yeah, here's your book of all the stuff you were talking about at that conference with some guys before, and I just synthesized it all and put it together."
But you could have had a plot on or something this whole time, recording it all.
Did you see that?
I did see that, and it was amazing. And I think I need one.
So what we're talking about is there's a new, I guess it's a product. It's basically an AI product that dictates literally everything around you, and it recognizes who is saying the things. So, I mean, we were at the REI Summit, and Colin Schwartz had one of those things on his shirt sleeve, and it captured the entire surrounding conversations, who said them, which is a little dangerous, I might add. But it had it all broken out, and it summarized it with bullet points, and I was just like, what just happened?
I cannot think of the number of times in my life I've had a great conversation and thought to myself, I wish I had notes of that.
Tell me about it. So that's welcome to my world.
Yeah.
So Jason Drees is the one who told me, he's like, you got to get this. He's like been on me for about a month about it. And then Andrew Devlin talked about it. He's like, yeah, he goes, one of my clients had this on and they were in talks and it came up that they were saying that they didn't agree to it, but they had it all on the plot and it worked in court. It worked in court and it worked out in his benefit.
Wow. Oh, I didn't even consider the legal. Suddenly a verbal agreement is enforceable again.
Yes.
I'm more worried about the downside of that.
There are so many downsides. There are so many downsides. You think hot mics are a problem now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
Walking into the bathroom.
Well, I'm always like, the best content that comes out of me is when I'm sitting having a cigar with somebody that wants to, like, quote unquote, pick your brain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that was fire. Why can't I always talk like that, like on a podcast or something like that?
No, I have the same. I have the same experience. I get nervous and I pause and babble and all sorts of stuff. And I'm just talking to a guy, one-on-one. It's so much easier.
Well, okay. So what?
Back to the question.
Yeah, you're okay. So you're rocking Applaud now, and you got a book inside you.
The book is called.
Yeah. What do you think the title would be or the topic?
Just keep going.
Just keep going.
Just keep going. It gets hard. It always gets hard. Nothing worth doing is not hard. Mm-hmm. And you just have to pick what's hard and the thing that is easier for you than it is for other people, and then just knuckle down and do that thing. And that's the path to the happiness, to the reward, to financial reward, to business success, to all those things. It's just acknowledge that everything is difficult, and it's the fact that it is difficult that makes it worth doing. If it was too easy, everybody would do it, or there wouldn't be point to it.
Yep.
Tell me what do you think about this book title for him? The Intentional Investor.
Didn't somebody else use that?
Yeah, it seems like that's out there already.
It is?
I feel like that exists out there somewhere. Whose is that?
I think. Or something very similar.
Well, because you're so intentional in what you're doing. And I'm
trying.
I'm
trying.
There we go.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, it's your podcast. You can interview anyone in the world today. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be real estate related, just so you know. Just somebody alive. Who's it going to be? What's the one question you want to ask?
Any living person. I'm going to say Tim Ferriss.
Ooh.
Oh, I don't think that's ever been mentioned before. Yeah. What do you think you'd ask him?
I think that was Jerry Schlickburn's.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think 4-Hour Workweek, when I first read 4-Hour Workweek, that was the sort of the spark for me, where I was like, hey, 100 hours a week of just grinding harder and harder is not the way to go through life. It's what really inspired me. Has it been tactically that terribly valuable? No. But did it tell me, hey, this is possible? It is possible to build a business where you don't have to work 100 hours a week. You don't have to kill yourself to get the results you need. You just need to, instead of using huge amounts of effort, you just apply the right amount of leverage in the right spot and you can get similar results.
Okay. So you got Tim Ferriss in front of you. What are you going to ask him?
Where else in life can you find leverage like that? Like, how do you optimize that? And I wish I could say I'd read 4-Hour Body, for example. Things like that. How does a person go about optimizing for fantastic results in small amounts of time? And like, what's the best takeaway that he's gotten from everybody that he's interviewed? Because he's had access to all these incredibly amazing people that I can't even think of their names. But I want to know what the big takeaway to getting massive results in small amounts of time is there. What's the most powerful tool that he's developed there?
Yeah, I really liked his book Tools of Titans as well.
Long one.
It's really long, but it's actually really easy to read because they're only like 1 or 2 page little excerpts from his conversations with all these famous people and high performers, and that was a really, really good one.
I'll have to check that out.
Jerry gave me that book for my birthday.
Tools of Titans.
Yeah, and it's like it's like,
yeah,
it's like this thing.
Yeah, it's like Yellow Pages.
And I looked at her and I'm like, "You're serious?" She's like, "No, just read it."
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I've got like 8 books that are on my reading list right now.
Yeah,
but
it's hard to stay on top of all of them. It's like an endless stream. But okay, speaking of endless streams, we are now at your funeral, and your legacy, your life behind you. You're gonna have somebody come up to the podium and say something about you. Who is it, and what do you hope are the parting words that they're leaving the room with?
I hope it's my boys, and I hope that they feel like I showed them how and taught them to be good and decent men, and that I showed them how to live a life of integrity, both to themselves and to the people around them, and to, find joy in as many portions of their life as they possibly can.
Love it. Mic drop.
Do you think you have more kids?
No. 2 and done. I'm almost 43.
Yeah.
I can't stay up with a newborn anymore. I'm done.
But I told my wife, I'm like, at 40 years old, I'm getting snipped. No more babies.
Yeah. No, with the younger guy, it was a little rough. So
if you can speak directly to a mentor in your life that you've had, dead or alive, what's the one thing you'd like to say to them, and who was it?
I think in many ways, the most important thing anyone has ever said to me in my entire life is the last thing my grandfather said to me, which is wherever you go and whatever you do, have a good time.
Wherever you go, have a good time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So appreciation of the gift you're given, which is life. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. You just appreciate it and realize that this is not for very long.
Yeah.
And
nobody gets out alive.
No, nobody gets out alive, and there's no sense in making yourself miserable.
That's a good one. Okay. Knowing that you are a little bit of off grid with regard to online presence, is there anything you're looking for in your business or life right now where somebody catching this podcast might be able to connect you with the right person, place, or thing that would move the needle?
I think moving the needle for me it's all about the right people, and everything in life is about who you know, and especially in this business. But right now I'm at a place where I'm kind of maxed about what I can accomplish just because there's only so many hours in the day. Mm-hmm. And I am really hopeful to build a relationship or relationships with some folks that can step into sort of like a property management role, project management role in my organization, who can kind of partner with me to sort of take some of that off my plate. So if I were to find the right person who could handle that could be pretty exciting.
Okay. So project management for flip and rehab.
Yeah, fix and flips and rehab projects in general.
Okay.
So it's kind of what I'm out looking for these days.
Anybody catching this that's in the Lincoln area or maybe Omaha wants
Lincoln or Omaha.
Yeah. And they want to work on, do some project management work on residential construction, reach out.
Yeah. I'm Andy.Schock on Instagram. You wouldn't know it by looking at the account.
You are on Instagram.
I am. I don't think I've ever actually posted anything, but I do have an account, and you can reach me there.
Okay. Well, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, when we put this episode out, we'll give you a tag on this, so that way people can connect with you.
His first connect.
Yeah, your first.
I think my cousin follows me or something.
Nice. Well, Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah,
Thanks for telling your secrets. Besides Taro, I don't think we've talked to anybody that has 13 flips going consistently right now.
It's a lot.
So
lots of caffeine. That's my secret.
Yeah,
lots of caffeine.
220 episodes. That's a statement right there, man.
Yep.
And you're like the hidden gem. We had no idea.
Well, thank you. It's been super great getting to meet the two of you and getting to know you and chatting with you and everything. And I'm sure we'll
hope to see you around some more meetups or something locally.
Yeah, I'm going to get better at that. I think that's a good idea to start spending some time.
Just plan some rest for the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Which I needed because I had an event last night and I was pretty dead this morning. So I'm like, I can't sleep in.
Yeah, these are the problems.
At least school's out now. You don't have to get up so early. I had to get up at 5:30 every morning with the kids.
So. Yeah, I get that. Well, with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of REIA Radio, Aiden Bear, and Ted Kosh, I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to Andy from 50K MBA and failed flips to lifestyle by design. Schock. Signing off.
Welcome to REIA Radio episode. I don't know the episode number, sorry.
200.